Freddie Mercury was known for his outrageously wild parties throughout the 70s and 80s. In 1978, he threw a party in New Orleans that featured nude waiters and waitresses, naked models wrestling in a mud pit, and dwarves walking around with trays of cocaine strapped to their heads. The butt plug was invented and patented by Dr. Frank Young in 1892. He marketed them as a cure for various conditions including acne, headaches, and insanity. King Charles II of England had a wig made out of the pubic hair of his mistresses. King George IV later attempted to make one of his own but died before he completed it. F. Scott Fitzgerald, author of The Great Gatsby, was once told by his wife Zelda that he had a small package. Feeling inadequate, he confessed this to his friend Ernest Hemingway. So Hemingway told Fitzgerald to meet him in the bathroom, where he took a look at his member and told him it was perfectly fine. In the year 2000, pro wrestler Bam Bam Bigelow, who was known for his iconic Flames outfit and head tattoo, received second-degree burns over 40% of his body while rescuing 3 children from a house fire. He spent 10 days recovering in the hospital after saving their lives. In 2017, a 9-foot-long alligator clamped onto the leg of 10-year-old Florida girl Juliana Osa. But luckily, she remembered a life-saving trick she recently learned at Gatorland theme park. She stuck her fingers up the gator's nose and it instantly released her leg and took off. For the first few years of his life, Mason McDeed cried constantly from his issues with cerebral palsy. His parents struggled to find any way to comfort him until one day his dad put on some Metallica. Soon he noticed Mason had immediately stopped crying and fell asleep, which would work every time he played heavy metal music thereafter. Ever since this revelation, Mason has attended over 500 metal concerts with his dad. After Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in 1968, his funeral was held at Morehouse College in Atlanta. A small group of current students were chosen to be ushers for his funeral, and one of them was Samuel L. Jackson. 1976, Troy Leon Gregg was sentenced to death for murdering 3 men in Georgia. On the night before his execution, he managed to escape only to be killed in a bar fight that same night. Speaking of execution, in 1915, Mexican man Wenceslao Moguel was sentenced to death and shot 9 times by a firing squad. But he miraculously managed to survive every shot, including the coup de grace, a final shot to the head at point-blank range to ensure death. He went on to live for another 70 years, finally dying in 1976. In 2004, grandmother Dorothy Fletcher suddenly suffered a heart attack while on her flight to Florida. When the stewardess asked if there was a doctor on board, 15 people stood up. It was a group of doctors on their way to a cardiology conference. Adam West and Frank Gorshin were both kicked out of an orgy once because they refused to stop acting like Batman and the Riddler during it. The man who invented autopilot for airplanes did so in 1916, with the intent of founding the Mile High Club with another man's wife. It was working quite well until someone accidentally bumped into the off switch during the act, causing the aircraft to crash into the Long Island Sound. Both the pilot and passenger were unharmed, but their affair was discovered when they failed to explain why they were both naked when help arrived. According to historians, when Gandhi was in his 70s, he went to the extreme to test his sexual celibacy as part of his religion. He would conduct experiments where he would sleep naked with underage girls and refrain from touching them. Gandhi claimed that these tests were his moral duty. Winston Churchill was a bit of a nudist. He claimed to have some form of skin condition that made clothes uncomfortable for him to wear for long periods of time. When he visited the White House, he once had a conversation with FDR while he was completely naked. 18-year-old John Thompson was home alone when he had both of his arms ripped off in a farming accident, but he still managed to get up and dial 911 with a pencil in his mouth. He miraculously survived and both of his arms were reattached. Co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, was denied after begging for whiskey on his deathbed and died 36 years sober. According to some ancient beliefs, your birthmarks show how you died in your past life. In 2010, a 17-year-old Chinese boy sold his kidney on the black market so that he could buy the new iPhone and iPad. 8 years later, the man's other kidney failed, and now he's bedridden for life. This massive pile of buffalo skulls shows how the population of American buffalo dropped from 30 million to 300 in just 50 years. Most were killed by the US military to deprive Native Americans of their primary food source. This famous mummy found in the ash of Pompeii appeared to be satisfying himself during his final moments in 79 AD. During a 1998 soccer match in the Republic of Congo, a lightning bolt struck one of the goal pitches. It killed all 11 members of the home team who were all wearing metal spikes, but the other team was left completely unscathed since they'd all been wearing rubber cleats. This is a photo of two engineers embracing for one final hug while standing on top of a wind turbine engulfed in flames. One of the men jumped to escape the fire while the other was burned alive while attempting to reach the staircase. Here's a photo of a little African girl at a zoo in Belgium in 1958. Visitors would often throw bananas and peanuts to her as if she was an animal. A hitchhiking robot that relied on the kindness of strangers to travel the world made it safely across Canada, Germany, and the Netherlands. But just 2 weeks into its American tour, Hitchbot was found in Philadelphia with its arms and head ripped off. Ugh. Well, it turns out the Duke grape scandal was a confirmed massive lie. In 2006, a stripper named Crystal Mangum was hired to perform at a party hosted by members of the Duke University men's lacrosse team. After the party, Crystal claimed that 3 players on the team dragged her into the bathroom before beating, choking, and graping her. The DA who was assigned to the case then conspired with the DNA lab director to withhold crucial evidence that would have easily cleared the players of the accusations. Instead, they were charged with rape, and a public uproar led to the team's entire lacrosse season being canceled, while the coach of 16 years was forced to resign. But the players were exonerated the next year after it was revealed that Crystal was actually just a crazy bitch. A few years later, she was found guilty of second-degree murder after repeatedly stabbing her boyfriend and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. Just recently on a podcast, the still-in-prison former stripper admitted that she made up the entire grape case and has asked the Duke players for forgiveness. In 2010, 55-year-old Greg Flanagan was found dead on the floor inside of his locked hotel room in Texas. There were no signs of a break-in or robbery, as Greg's wallet was still in his back pocket with cash inside. He had suffered no obvious external injuries, but had massive internal damage, including broken ribs, damage to his liver and intestines, and a hole through his heart. Flanagan's death was soon ruled an unsolved homicide, despite coroners having no idea what actually happened to him. After an 8-month investigation, it was revealed that he died from a 1-in-a-million series of events. A drunk guest in the next hotel room accidentally fired a single bullet through the wall while playing with his pistol. While Flanagan was laying down watching Iron Man 2, the bullet hit him directly in the scrotum and continued up through his body and through his heart, likely killing him moments after he stood up and stumbled toward the door. Lance Moeller was later sentenced to 10 years in prison for his neighbor's bizarre accidental murder. An unknown perpetrator recently managed to hack into Game Freak's documents and released countless files, including future game data, personal info about employees, and most notoriously, lore stories about sexual relationships between humans and Pokemon. One such story involves a young girl who is kidnapped by a Typhlosion disguised as a human, that apparently proceeds to grape the child and get her pregnant with a human-Pokemon hybrid. Another story involves a group of humans that capture and torture a bunch of Slackoths. One of the women in the group is later kidnapped by the Slackoth tribe and impregnated by their slacking leader, eventually giving birth to her own Slackoth baby. Similar disturbing stories detail human relationships with Lapras, Rapidash, and Octillery. Game Freak has reportedly apologized to everyone affected by the data breach. But it's unclear why these particular unsettling stories were ever written in the first place, let alone found among Game Freak's files. In 2022, a badger burrowing into a cave in Spain accidentally dug up the largest collection of Roman coins ever found in the region. A local man was walking outside the cave and noticed nearly 100 coins randomly scattered on the ground next to a burrow. So he alerted archaeologists, who eventually found over 100 more ancient coins inside. Most of them date back to 300 AD and were likely hidden there by refugees over 1700 years ago. This apartment in Istanbul has renovations from 3 empires and 1 republic that ruled over the city at different times, all being built on top of each other. In 2016, Spanish man Juan Francisco was making some renovations in his home that resulted in a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Behind the first wall he removed, he found the facade of a Renaissance-era hospital that was built in the 16th century. Juan immediately alerted archaeologists, who told him it once belonged to St. George's Hospital, a long-forgotten masterpiece by famed Spanish architect Andrés de Vandel-Vera. The structure is more than 30 feet tall and covers several floors of Juan's home. It's unclear as to why such an incredible work was hidden behind the wall of someone's home, but it had likely been that way for centuries. When future President JFK was dating Miss Denmark Inga Arvid in the 1940s, The FBI once bugged their room because they thought she was a Nazi spy. Turns out they didn't hear much conversation, but instead just a lot of spicy time. But that's not the crazy part. The reason why the FBI thought Inga was a Nazi spy was because she was Hitler's companion during the 1936 Olympics, and he once described her as the perfect example of Nordic beauty. This means that Hitler and JFK may very well have been Eskimo bros. The first confirmed minor to be executed in the United States was 16-year-old Thomas Granger in 1642, who was sentenced to death for intercourse involving several animals, including a mare, a cow, 2 goats, multiple sheep, 2 calves, and a turkey. Authorities consulted with his parents prior to the execution, and they thought that he would never be able to live this down. All parties agreed it would be best to simply execute him and wash their hands of the whole situation. 19-year-old Sam Ballard was a star rugby player in Australia until he was dared to eat a garden slug at a team party. The slug ended up infecting him with an awful condition called rat lungworm, which paralyzed him and eventually killed him 8 years later. In 1894, a priest in Germany saved a little boy from drowning. That little boy was Adolf Hitler. In 2013, a Clemson student ran an experiment to help turtles safely cross the road. So he placed a fake turtle in the road to observe driver behavior and accidentally discovered something very disturbing. He found that 6% of people deliberately went out of their way to hit the turtle. After Elvis died on the toilet at age 42, his doctor said the cause of death was an embarrassing case of chronic constipation. His stool was so backed up from drugs that he hadn't taken a dump in at least 4 months. In ancient Rome, men found guilty of grapes sometimes had their testicles crushed between 2 stones. In 2011, Tokyo officials went to congratulate the oldest man in the city on his 111th birthday. But upon entering the man's home, they instead found his mummified remains sprawled across his bed. He'd been dead for 30 years, and his family was still collecting the pension money he was receiving. These are the graves of a Catholic woman and her Protestant husband who were not allowed to be buried together in 1888. Until as recently as 1999, doctors believed that babies couldn't feel pain and performed surgeries on them without anesthesia. In the late 1980s, a woman went on a vacation getaway where singles could meet other singles. She quickly thought she met the man of her dreams and decided to sleep with him that night. But when she woke up in the hotel room the next morning, the man was gone and there was a small wooden coffin on the table next to her. Inside was a note that read, "You are now HIV positive. Welcome to the world of AIDS." NBA legend Dennis Rodman was once on a cruise with his girlfriend when they wanted to try something different in bed. She suggested for Dennis to run and jump inside of her while she was laying down unclothed. This resulted in Dennis shattering his member and pouring blood all over the bed. It was the first of 3 times that he would break his pecker, since once you break it the first time, it becomes way easier to break again. Gouverneur Morris was an important founding father of the United States who wrote the introduction to the Constitution. But he died at the age of 64 after attempting to clear a urinary tract blockage using a whalebone as a catheter. While the practice of marrying your cousin is typically seen as something only done by British royalty or Alabama rednecks, up until the 1900s, virtually no one married complete strangers like we do today. In fact, 80% of all marriages throughout history have been between second cousins or closer. Chechen girl Amina Ependeva is diagnosed with 2 rare genetic conditions: albinism, which makes her skin and hair extremely white, and heterochromia, in which her eyes are 2 completely different colors. Speaking of albinism, this extremely rare white killer whale was spotted off the coast of Alaska in 2020. The odds of this happening are about 1 in 10,000, as only 8 albino orcas have ever been seen in recorded history. Svalbard, Norway is the only visa-free zone in the world. Regardless of citizenship, anyone can live and work there for as long as they want. Oh, not the rare bison sirloin roast. I'm trying to record a video here. Sheesh. Bill Watterson, creator of Calvin and Hobbes, refused to license his characters for any toys or products, but he made an exception for a 1993 textbook called Teaching with Calvin and Hobbes that was made to help students with learning disabilities. Only around 20 copies are known to exist, and the most recent one sold for over $10,000 in 2009. This is an ancient burial mound in Marathon, Greece, that contains the ashes of 192 Athenians who perished in the Battle of Marathon more than 2,500 years ago. Here's an extremely rare surviving piece of Tyrian purple dye that was found in the remains of an ancient Roman bathhouse. The color was used to create the famed purple clothing of Roman emperors and was extremely difficult to make. Just 1 ounce of Tyrian dye took 250,000 snails to produce, as it was said to be worth more than 3 times its weight in gold. These photos show the incredible evolution of ancient Greek statues over the span of just a few hundred years. Just this past summer, a tourist at a beach in Bulgaria noticed a beach bar table that looked considerably old. Law enforcement soon called in some archaeologists who eventually identified the item as a 1700-year-old ancient Roman sarcophagus. Information about the artifact's history and how it ended up on a beach resort remain unclear. Benjamin Franklin reportedly had a big thing for gilfs. He once wrote a long, detailed letter to his friend telling him all the benefits of having an older woman as a mistress. His reasons included they are more thankful for the attention, they're more adventurous than younger women, they are experienced and need not be trained. He was also very clear that the face ages, but the downstairs does not. 1993, Ron Jeremy played Mario in a corno that parodied the video game franchise. It's called Super Hornio Brothers, and Nintendo owns all the rights. Anton von Leeuwenhoek was known as the father of microbiology. The first thing he ever put under a microscope was his own man milk, which led to his discovery of sperm. Before this, there were some rather questionable theories as to how babies were made, including the belief that trouser gravy contained really tiny humans that were transferred to the woman during intercourse. Anton fully expected to see tiny babies in his population paste. The first known photograph of a person was taken in Paris in 1838. It only happened because a man and his shoe shiner were the only people still enough on a busy street to show up in the 10-minute exposure. Aerial photographer Robert Haas was taking photos over the Yucatan when he captured something spectacular. A bunch of flamingos were hanging out in the shape of a giant flamingo. Here's an extremely rare photo of a schema monk outside of Mount Athos in Greece. These monks have taken the highest level of monastic vows, characterized by a profound commitment to spiritual practices and typically a much greater seclusion from the outside world. This extremely rare polka-dotted zebrafoal was photographed in Kenya last year. Here's a colorized photo of the last known Tasmanian tiger Benjamin at the Hobart Zoo in 1936. The species officially went extinct when Benjamin was accidentally locked outside of his sleeping quarters on a cold Tasmanian night and tragically froze to death. With the Menendez brothers back in the spotlight, let's take a look at the true reasons why the boys killed their parents. For starters, photos were found of the boys' unclothed bodies at 6 and 8 years old, which had their heads cropped out and focused on their privates. In one of the photos, 6-year-old Eric appears to be erect. The pics were sealed in an envelope with their mother's handwriting on it saying Eric's 6th birthday. According to medical records, there was an unexplained injury to the back of Eric's throat when he was 7 years old. Dr. Carrie English testified that the type of injury was a clear indication of oral copulation in children. When Lyle was 9 years old, he told his cousin Diane Vandermolen that he was afraid his dad was gonna come into his room, and that he and his dad had been touching each other down there. Diane also said that one time Jose put Lyle on a kitchen counter and prompted Lyle to jump off and he was going to catch him. As Lyle did so, Jose backed off and let him fall to the ground, telling him that you can never trust anybody. Their cousin Andy Cano testified that when he was 10 years old, 12-year-old Eric told him that his dad was massaging his D. Eric was trying to find out if these massages were normal and eventually told Andy that these massages are beginning to hurt. Andy ended up dying at age 30 from sleeping pills, and his mother told reporters he died because he couldn't cope with the incarceration of his cousins. After Andy passed away, his mother found a letter that 17-year-old Eric had written to him a few months before the murders. In the letter, Eric mentions the non-stop abuse. Mom isn't doing good. I don't know why she puts up with dad's shit. At times, I wish I could talk to her about things, you know? But the way she worships him and tells him everything, I'm just so afraid she'll tell him whatever I say. I just can't risk it. So I'm stuck here alone. I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. He's so overweight that I just can't stand to see him. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. I know what you said before, but I'm afraid. You just don't know Dad like I do. He's crazy. He's warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle. Am I a serious wimpus? I don't know, I'll make it through this. I can handle it, Andy. I need to stop thinking about it. Two more cousins, Kathleen and Alan, spent summers at the Menendez household and said the father would often take the boys to their bedroom and forbid the cousins from going down the hall. The cousins also testified in court that Jose and the boys often showered together, even when they were teenagers. Alan and Kathleen said they could hear cries and moans coming from the bedroom, but Kitty Menendez would turn up the TV volume really high so that they couldn't hear what was happening. At the age of 14, Lyle Menendez wrote a school essay called "I Will Change Your Verdict," about a man who's sentenced to death for killing a child molester to protect a 12-year-old boy. Just before writing the essay, Lyle found out for the first time that his father had been molesting 12-year-old Eric. The essay reads, "A man awaits his turn on the electric chair. You, the average citizens of America, put that man there. Now you can taste his death. You hope it hurts and is slow. Do you know what drove him to do it? You never even gave him a chance to talk. He only wanted to say a few things, but no, not you. You couldn't let this thing talk as if he had rights or feelings. You only looked at the evidence, smiled, and yelled guilty. Why, my friend? Why?" At that same age of 14, Lyle began losing his hair, an indication of the stress and psychological turmoil he endured as a child. He also continued playing with stuffed animals and wetting the bed well into his teenage years due to the lasting effects of the abuse. After the murders, the brothers were both evaluated in jail by some of the best child abuse and trauma experts in the country, and they all concluded that both the boys had been severely traumatized, molested, and abused. Dozens of other witnesses, including friends, family members, neighbors, teachers, and coaches, supported these claims throughout the first trial. But despite all this, the first trial ended with 2 deadlocked juries, since all of the men reportedly raised their hands in favor of first-degree murder, while none of the women raised theirs. In the retrial, the judge didn't allow any testimony about the sexual abuse claims, and both brothers were sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Several jurors from the second trial later revealed that they never would have voted in favor of first-degree murder if they had known about the detailed history of their awful abuse. In her famous diary, Anne Frank originally wrote many explicit details involving her lady parts, menstruation, and pleasuring herself. Her father, Otto, cut those parts out. John Harvey Kellogg, one of the Kellogg brothers who invented breakfast cereal, advocated for sewing silver wires through boys' foreskins to prevent them from masturbating. In 1969, Yoko Ono released a film entitled Self-Portrait, consisting of a 42-minute shot of her husband John Lennon's semi-erect member. Following its initial screening, the film was never shown again. Often referred to as the father of vegetarianism, Sylvester Graham shunned alcohol, white bread, meat, and lust. He popularized whole-grain food products and originally invented the graham cracker in the early 1800s to stop people from masturbating or having sexual desires. In 1851, Graham died of complications from an opium enema at the age of 57. Photographer Herbert van der Beek captured this insanely rare moment of a jaguar diving underwater to catch its prey. Unlike domesticated cats, jaguars love the water and are known to be excellent swimmers. In 1932, Dr. Eric Solomon faked a broken arm so that he could sneak a camera in his cast to photograph the Supreme Court. It's one of only 2 existing photos of the Supreme Court in session. Here's an amazing photo of a diver at Silfra Fissure in Iceland touching both North America and Europe at the same time. This is an extremely rare view of people peeking out the balcony of the Statue of Liberty. This area has been closed to the public since 1916 due to terrorist threats. A Florida photographer captured this incredible image of an owl raising a duckling after mistaking the egg for its own. Concerned that the owl would eat the duckling once it realized the situation, a local wildlife sanctuary agreed to take care of the baby bird when they had the chance to steal it from the owl's nest. This extreme yellow pigment originating from dried cow urine that was only fed mango leaves for its entire life. Real skeletons were used while filming the first Poltergeist because it was cheaper than making prop ones at the time. The woman who acted in this creepy scene wasn't told they were real until after the shooting was finished. Many people believe that using these real skeletons caused the set to become cursed. For example, while filming the creepy clown doll scene, the doll nearly killed Robbie Freeling when an animatronic error caused his arm to quickly tighten around the boy's neck. When the young actor started gesturing that he couldn't breathe, Steven Spielberg thought it was just really good acting. While While his life was spared, multiple actors from the movie series weren't so lucky. Dominique Dunne, who played the older sister in the first film, was murdered by her ex-boyfriend right after the movie premiered. In 1988, the little girl who played Carol Ann died of cardiac arrest at the young age of 12. The actor who played the evil preacher in Poltergeist 2 died of stomach cancer just after they finished filming. And the actor who played the Native American shaman died soon afterwards during a heart-lung transplant. A little boy from Germany who loves motorcycles was diagnosed with cancer. So his family posted online asking if anyone could ride their motorcycles down their street to help cheer him up. They would have been happy if only 30 or 40 people showed up, but the post went viral and over 15,000 bikers ended up coming. Brazilian mother Silvia Greco won FIFA's Best Fan Award in 2009 after she was seen in the crowd explaining the entire match to her son that was blind. A Brazilian cow that managed to escape being slaughtered was later found at a local water park riding the slides and lounging in the pool. The cow's owner later decided to spare the cow's life and even ended up naming it Slide. Bob Marley gave his friend Vincent Tata Ford official credit for the lyrics to the song No Woman, No Cry. Ford ran a soup kitchen in the Jamaican ghetto where Marley grew up, so Bob gave him credit for writing the song to give him royalty payments that would keep the soup kitchen open. After Bax the dog went blind, his friend Buttons the goose became his eyes by hanging onto him and honking to direct him. An Arab-American man from California named Mohammed Bazik is a foster parent who only takes in orphan children who are terminally ill. He's fostered more than 80 children over 20 years and has continued this practice even after his wife passed away in 2015.